Lesson 3. The missing piece. Understanding trauma. Trauma is the ultimate experience of "this will last forever." Bessel van der Kolk. Am I suffering from a trauma? An explanation at last. Thank goodness I'm not going mad. I am having a reasonable reaction to what happened to me. Do you know how liberating it was to finally read information from an expert explaining that everything I had been feeling, thinking, and going through for the last 30 years was normal? Before reading this, I was resigned to the fact that I was always going to feel and be this way until my dying days. I literally came across this information by accident. As part of my emotional intimacy course through the International Coaching Institute in Australia, one of my lessons for further study and research recommended that I read The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk to learn what happens to our bodies when we experience a trauma, when we also suppress our feelings and emotions. I had no idea that this book was going to be a game changer for me. It was about trauma survivors and what they have experienced. Voila! There it was, written down, every symptom I was feeling. I can't tell you how elated I was to discover this knowledge. The suffering and silence can now come to an end. I don't have to develop strategies to survive and pretend that everything was honky-dory. It was the first time in years that I really cried. I mean, really cried. I believed I not only cried for my own self, but for my grandma too. No one was able to reassure her that she wasn't going mad and that what she was feeling was completely normal. The sense of relief is hard to put into words. I also felt very sad for her, how alone she must have felt. For me, it was as if I found the missing piece of the puzzle to my soul. A massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. These are some of the feelings I was experiencing. Can you relate to any of these? Afraid of feeling, helplessness, anguish, your heart races, heartbroken, distracted, trouble focusing and prioritizing, anxiety, depression, self-loathing, nightmares, flashbacks, foggy brain, shut down, numb, feeling you are physically and mentally vacant in a body, exhaustion, disengaged with your surroundings, tense in your shoulders, back and muscle pain, grinding your teeth and clenching your jaw, on high alert for the next attack. You know as well as I do how exhausting it is staying in survival mode. It is hard to feel safe in your body and surroundings. Trauma is not just a bad experience or memory, but it is as if we are reliving the memory every day. Trauma physically changes the brain. Even though you know the event is over, the brain doesn't know that it's over. The body stays in a state of constant high alert. You feel like there is impending danger. You are in fight, flight, or freeze. And when you are constantly in this state, it is very hard to take in new information or new experiences. For anyone to judge or shame us and say that we should not be feeling this way because it happened a long time ago does not understand that this has nothing to do with the rational part of the brain. This is not a problem you can rationally solve. This is because it has to do with the lower part of our brain, the housekeeping part of our brain, which cannot think rationally or understand the concept of time. The interesting thing to learn is that trauma and the research of it is relatively new. 20 years ago, the effects of trauma were not completely understood, but with dedicated doctors such as Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and Dr. Bruce Perry and the development of technology enabling brain scans today, doctors are becoming more aware of the effects of trauma on the brain and the body. So who are Dr. Perry and Dr. van der Kolk? Dr. Bruce Perry trained as a neuroscientist and has been studying the brain and stress response systems since he was in college. He is also a psychiatrist, a field he pursued after his training in the neurosciences, and is a renowned brain development and trauma expert. He found that having a brain-aware perspective helped him to better understand people. He found this seemingly senseless behaviour makes sense when you look at what is behind it. In his book, What Happened to You, co-authored with Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Perry discussed how trauma affects the brain. Since the brain is part of us that allows us to think, feel and act, he wonders about what has happened to a person that influences how their brain works. Why did they do that? What would make them act this way? His book provides a window of understanding about the complexities of the brain, how the brain processes information, and the effects of trauma. It is a must-read, or listen to it on Audible. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Body Keeps the Score, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk was born in 1943 and is a psychiatrist, author, researcher and educator based in the United States. He is a leading expert in the treatment of trauma, especially when it comes to how trauma affects the body, brain and nervous system. For an insightful yet easy listen regarding the impacts of trauma on the body, go to YouTube to hear the interview between Dr. van der Kolk and Matt Bodner on Healing Trauma, How to Feel Safe in Your Body, The Science of Success interview with Dr. Bessel van der Kolk.